Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? In terms of sales, the Wii U was troubled from the start, and the end of the road for it is finally approaching. But just what happened with that console to begin with? To provide a little context, as I'm filming this, we recently learned through kind of an unofficial report that Nintendo has stopped production on Wii U hardware. They're no longer going to actually manufacture the consoles. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be available for sale, but it means that Nintendo is finally going to start retooling the assembly lines for the upcoming Switch console that's due in early 2017. And it's kind of the end of a pretty bittersweet chapter, I think, in Nintendo's history. And it's a bit disappointing for me personally. The Wii U, obviously the successor to the original Wii. The original Wii was an absolute just blockbuster game console. By far Nintendo's most popular console in terms of sales. It sold something like over 100 million consoles. And it was such a different way of playing games that people who normally didn't even play games bought a Wii. Like my own parents bought a Wii and they sat there and they played all the Wii sports games and that sort of thing. So it really reinvigorated Nintendo at a time when Nintendo needed it. Coming off the GameCube wasn't the most popular console either. But what's really interesting is that even the GameCube actually sold more units than the Wii U did, or has so far. Now, of course, Nintendo hasn't officially said anything yet about, future plans for Wii U sales, when the final date for availability on all that's going to be. In fact, even the report about them stopping production was kind of rumor mill, but not really. It was on an unofficial report. Nintendo hasn't acknowledged it, at least not to my knowledge. So it's a really interesting story, I think, in general for the Wii U. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of mentally digesting and processing and trying to figure out just what it was that caused the Wii U to not really live up, I think, to its potential in terms of sales. I do want to go on the record and say that I think from a technical perspective, the Wii U worked very well. I am a fan of that console. I don't look so much at the hardware specs for gaming consoles and then, make this decision as to, well, on paper, this thing has a faster CPU than this other console, so the faster one is the better one. I look at it more from the whole package and how well it plays games. And it's clear that Nintendo does kind of the same thing. Nintendo, even the original Wii, the 3DS, the DS, a lot of their consoles have never been the most powerful thing available. But what Nintendo has done is been able to provide this overall enjoyable, fun package that still works well within the scope of what it's intended for. I don't think Nintendo built the Wii U to be this first-person shooting powerhouse kind of console. And the games available, kind of correlated to that. But in general, I think the hardware did very well. And I think anyone who's ever played a Wii U probably wouldn't really complain too much about the hardware either. It's able to render games smoothly and in high def like it was designed to, and I think, that's pretty much good enough for the average gaming, consumer. Not the diehards. Remember, the diehards are only a small portion of the market. So I think there were a few things that really prevented the Wii U from taking off. Launch titles was one thing that kind of came to mind with me. I wouldn't say that the Wii U's launch titles were weak, but coming off of a huge hit like the Wii, any sort of sequel, and this I think holds true for any kind of company, coming up with a sequel to just a massive product is very, very tough. At least coming up with a sequel that does as well as the original product. And Nintendo was no exception there. I mean, they were really in the spotlight. It brought Nintendo back from some pretty bad financial positions that they were in prior to the Wii. So at the end of the Wii's lifetime, Nintendo had a lot of pressure on it to try to innovate. Launch titles, I think, could have been a factor. New Super Mario Bros. U, that's a fun game, but it's not the kind of game that sets the world on fire. It's not necessarily a system seller. It didn't necessarily really take advantage of the unique things that the Wii U could do. Same thing kind of, I think, with Nintendo Land. What I think would have been for a better launch title, and some people are going to disagree, and that's fine. You're welcome to disagree. But I think Mario Kart 8 probably would have been the better launch title to go with the Wii U, because it's a very recognizable title. It's a very popular title. That game is proven to be a system seller. And it did a pretty decent job at taking advantage of the two-screen approach. It wasn't embedded in the game. I mean, you didn't have to, use both screens in order to play the game. But because of the nature of the gamepad, Mario Kart 8 did, I think, a pretty decent job in that you got the main game view on the TV, but then you'd get supplemental information that really was relevant to the course you were on the gamepad. It's also a great multiplayer game. It just, Mario Kart 8 fosters having multiple people play, whether it's online or actual couch gaming, having friends over. I think that would have really helped drive sales of the Wii U better off the bat and really show people this is a new console in its own right and not just a sequel to the Wii or not just, a new version of the Wii, which we'll get to in a moment. Especially with that multiplayer aspect to it. You get your new Wii, you tell your Wii U, you tell your friends, hey, come over, some night, let's get a multiplayer Mario Kart 8 going. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, Mario Kart 8 in HD, and this is a fun game. You bet, sign me up. And then they'll come over and play it and be like, damn, I want one of these too. And then, they'll go out and buy it. Whereas when you launch with primarily single player games, you don't get quite that much of an effect. And that is, I think, where the Wii did really well, because the Wii, based on the motion control nature, I think fostered multiplayer really well. You wanted to interact with other people in the room. And that was a big system seller. I mean, that's kind of how I decided, what I want a Wii, was going over to a friend's house and seeing it and, getting in a two-person game of Wii Sports Bowling. And that was fun, and I went out and bought one. I think that would have been helpful for the Wii U. It was a stronger selection of multiplayer launch titles. And then you may be like, well, what about the midlife game for that console? Well, they didn't really predict it, I don't think, but Splatoon was an absolute sleeper hit. And it did a pretty good job as a midlife title as well. So I think that could have been, leave Splatoon where it was in terms of the release cycle. And that would have been a good midlife kind of after several years type of system seller. The other big thing that I think really hurt the Wii U was marketing. And specifically with the Wii U, it was its name. Wii U, when you think about the title, it's actually pretty clever. It's a play on words in that the Wii port, it refers to the original Wii, so there's kind of a brand recognition there. Even if, people hadn't heard of Nintendo as a name, they would have heard of the Wii. Oh, you bought a Wii, cool. So it gives you some brand recognition. It also refers to the multiplayer aspects of the console, which I think it was pretty good at. But then you have the U on the end, and that refers to an additional kind of inward focus that the console is trying to target, specifically with the gamepad. The Wii U was really clever in that it could work like a regular Wii if you wanted it to. It was fully backward compatible with Wii games. But it also worked better as a single person console, with the gamepad giving you a better immersive experience, albeit for only one player. You couldn't do multiple gamepads on a Wii U. So Wii U as a name was actually really clever if you sat and thought about it. The problem is not enough people sat and thought about it. Not enough people kind of did the research into figuring out what that console is all about. They just looked at the name, they looked at the actual console itself, which visually, like, you know, the body of the console looks a lot like an original Wii. And then they looked at that controller thing, the gamepad, and they went, well, is this just, like, is that just the Wii? Why would I buy another Wii? I've already got one. And it caused confusion. I think Nintendo, had they picked a different name, regardless of how clever the name Wii U is, if they had picked a different name to really differentiate it and tried to better drive home the point, no, this isn't a successor to the Wii. This is a new thing. You know, this isn't just the Wii 2. This isn't a high-def version of the Wii, but rather an evolution of that gaming platform. It's its own thing in its own right. I think it would have resonated better. That said, no matter what, I think Wii U sales would have been down compared to the Wii. I think it's tough for Nintendo to really, for at least a long time, to get back into those sales near where the Wii was. If I'm remembering correctly, the Wii sold something like 100 million units. The GameCube sold something like 20 million units, and 20 million was pretty low by Nintendo standards. But the Wii U, I'd like to say it's only sold something like 16 or 17 million units. It sold even fewer than the GameCube. Would it have done as good as the Wii? No way. I don't think so. Just by the sheer nature of coming, hot off the heels of the Wii. And the Wii enjoyed a pretty good lifespan in its own right. Nintendo got a lot of mileage out of that console. But I think with better marketing, the Wii U probably could have done better than it ended up doing. Maybe eclipsed the GameCube, but at least done better than 16 or 17 million units. So where do we go from here? Well, obviously Switch is coming out, and as I'm filming this, there's still a lot we don't know about it. Nobody's had a chance to play it. We're getting little bits and pieces about the hardware specs. I'm pretty sure that by the time Switch comes out, Wii U is going to disappear from store shelves, at least, being sold brand new. You will definitely be able to find used Wii U systems and games for quite some time. And the other thing is Nintendo actually does a very good job of supporting its older systems. So in terms of like being able to get on the eShop and buy games and re-download games, get support if a Wii U hardware problem happens, that sort of thing, Nintendo will stand by it for a while. They're kind of washing their hands of it, I think, from the sales perspective, but it wouldn't do them any good from a PR perspective if they completely walked away from the console and told everyone, you know what, the day the Switch comes out, we're killing the eShop on the Wii U and all this other stuff. So I would say if you've been on the fence about investing in a Wii U, if you have been curious about it, just you can't pull the trigger, you just couldn't decide, you might want to start thinking about it a little bit harder. Everything, as I'm filming this, is still pretty much full price for the consoles and the games. And like I said, I think it's going to be sold for at least several more months. In fact, there will be a few more game releases for it. The new Zelda is going to be coming out for both the Wii U and Switch at the same time. So there's still more mileage to be had out of that console, even if it, isn't brand new shiny anymore. But keep an eye out for sales, because as we get closer to Switch launching, retailers are going to start dropping prices on it. Eventually they'll clearance it out at probably a pretty good rate. Something that kind of drove home to me not too long ago, that we've really moved into the next console generation and the previous generation really is done, was when I was at my local Target and I saw both an Xbox 360 and PS3 being sold brand new with a clearance sticker on them. Each of them was only being sold for like $130. I kind of hope that the Wii U ends up being a little bit of a sleeper hit, kind of, a few years on, like the GameCube did. We've been seeing a bit of a resurgence in popularity for the GameCube. I've been seeing prices on the games go up. Not necessarily the hardware, because people could always play the GameCube games in the original Wii consoles, at least the first revision of them. And in terms of hardware perspective, the original Wii actually gave you some advantages like progressive, component level output to a TV, which you can only get through a very expensive and now very rare cable for the GameCube hardware. But it's obvious that Switch is not going to be backward compatible. So I think we're going to kind of see the typical retro gaming price curve, where we're at the end of the Wii U's life, as relatively short as it was. Those prices are really going to fall. So in the next year or two, keep an eye out. And then I think in 5 to 10 years, prices are going to come back up, especially if there's no newer hardware to play those games on. So I guess the other way to look at it is, if you have a Wii U, maybe think twice about selling it. If you don't think you're going to get many more miles out of it, it may be worth hanging on to. But in any event, those are my thoughts on the Wii U. In some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for it, in that I do think it's been a solid console. There have been things about it that aggravated me, like that day one update that took forever to install. But Nintendo showed real signs of dedication to it, trying to make the best they could of it. There was some decent hardware innovation there. I like the idea of the gamepad. And I think Nintendo liked the idea of the gamepad, because look at the Switch. I mean, what does the Switch look like? It looks like a gamepad. So, I don't think it was a bad idea. I just think it was a combination of just trying to come off of a blockbuster prior success and misguided marketing, which oftentimes is enough to stop a product dead in its tracks. So I am curious, what do you think about the Wii U? Do you have one? Do you like it? If you don't have one, why not? Did it just not interest you, or do you think it's a load of crap? Am I talking garbage here? Do I not know what I'm talking about? Whatever. Just be civil. Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Let's continue the discussion. As always, I'm also interested in suggestions for future topics for the podcast here. I want to talk about what you want me to talk about. If there's something that's burning on your mind that you think would be conducive as a topic, please leave that down in the comments as well. I read all of them. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.